will be available on the Corners website following the meeting. Ensure your camera and microphone are off. This assists with the broadband connectivity and also prevents background noise. I will call on the round officer to present the report. If a member or officer wishes to ask a question or raise a point, please do so using the raise your hand function on your device. I will invite each member in the queue to speak, and at that point please switch your mic and camera on. After you have spoken, please ensure that you lower your hand and put your mic and camera off. Your device should be positioned so that your image is clear to the other participants, and please speak clearly and concisely directed to the camera. When calling for agreement of recommendations at each item, a no show of raised hands will be taken as indication of the committee's approval. In regard to declarations of interest, members are reminded of the protocol. If you must leave the meeting by ending the call, which will be confirmed by the moderator to the chair, and following consideration of the item, you'll be invited back into the meeting by the moderator. Please ensure you are available to accept the invite to rejoin. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is not being live streamed. However, be aware that it is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Corners website following the meeting. First item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting of the 2nd of September. This is for approval and accuracy. Thank you very much.
Good.
Declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they may have in any items on the agenda. It would be helpful if members explained why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. No declaration of interest. Any amendment contrary to officer recommendations moved by a member must be based on planning reasons. If such an amendment is proposed, the chair may choose to adjourn the meeting pursuant of the time-out protocol. The amendment must be provided in writing before it is subject to a vote. Members are reminded that a decision which is not based on legitimate planning reasons would leave the caller exposed to the risk of legal challenge and potentially significant costs arising therefrom. Okay, item number 3 is the detailed planning permission to erect 72 houses with associated accesses, parking, installation of air source, heat pumps and other associated infrastructure on land at Blackwater, Newmarket, Isle of Lewis. Sorry?
Sorry, Chair, it's Norman. I'm just thinking I should declare, I will declare an interest, although I won't necessarily leave the meeting because I am on the board of HHP, and I know that the development's being taken forward by HHP and Taoiseach Gowl. But I'm on the board representing the interests of the Cornwall as well. So I am asking to note my interest, but I will remain in the meeting if that's okay with yourself, Chair.
That's fine, Norman. We'll take a note of that. I think Morag Ferguson is going to speak to this report, first of all, Head of Economic Development.
I think I've just been promoted. Thank you, Chair.
Take the money. Take the money.
Yes, members, this is a major development, and under the terms of the scheme of delegation, it is considered by the Planning Applications Board with a decision ultimately to be taken by the full coroner. As it is a major development, the presentation does cover a fair amount of detail in order that members are in full possession of the information in arriving at its decision on what is a major development. The application is on a site allocated for housing in the local development plan, and as such, the principle of housing on this site is established. Further, as a major development, it has been subject to the process of a pre-application consultation with the community ahead of the planning application having been submitted to us. I'm first of all going to take members through a PowerPoint presentation of the site. Now, this is actually also uploaded on your Dropbox, but we will take you through it on a screen share. This first slide is for the benefit of those less familiar with the application site in relation to the town of Stornoway. In the site itself, it's located on the northern fringe of the built-up area of Stornoway, if you like, just before you leave Newmarket and head out onto the Barvis Moor Road. It's in an area that does benefit from good transport links, good public transport links, because a number of buses do travel in from the country into town. If I take you on to the next slide. This slide details the extent of the application site. The total site, bounded red there, extends to over 6 hectares, but the area to be developed is that to the left of the slide, and that area extends to just over 4.8 hectares. The site slopes from the northwest corner down towards the southeast, and there is a level change of about 15 metres across the site, dropping from the top down towards the road. The site borders the existing Glenthew housing development that was built maybe about 15-20 years ago, and there will be a vehicular link through from this new proposal into the Glenthew housing development, in order that there is the ability to use that existing road as a secondary access and egress route. The site includes the Newmarket play area, which is the area bounded in red to the right, and that area is included solely because there will be a pedestrian link from the new development site that will pass through the play park area in order to access a crossing which will cross over the main road. If I now take you on to the next slide. This next slide illustrates the proposed layout for the development. As I say, it's for 72 houses, and a new access will be created from the main Stornoway to Barvis Road at this point, with the secondary link that I mentioned earlier in the top northeastern corner of the site. Now, the single representation that was received related to concerns over loss of parking at the Hammerhead turning at that point, the fact that there will be increased traffic as a result of this new link, and the following consideration of that representation, some amendments were made, and that loss of parking is now compensated for by the addition of some communal parking on either side of the new access road, as illustrated. The housing will be terraced up the slope, similar to the way the Glenthew housing development has been developed, because the topography is very similar. And while there will be a necessity for some embankments and some small retaining walls, most of the level change can be achieved by grading of the land. In terms of amenity and landscaping, there will be an entrance feature just as you come in the gate, or come in the entrance road, and then there will be some landscaped features just to the left of the main entrance, and also around the perimeter of the industrial estate. And then the area that is proposed for surface water management, the Suds retention basin, here will also double up as an amenity area. The two new bus laybys will be created, one on either side of the road, to allow traffic coming in and out of town to pick up and drop off passengers coming into town and leaving the town. The proposal is for 72 houses, with 68 of these to be semi-detached units. There will also be 4 detached units. And then across that housing mix, there will be 12 units which will meet enhanced accessibility requirements. Okay, if we move on to the next slide. This next slide shows a proposed route for the pedestrian route through the play park. It's not finalised, but that is likely to be a route, and it would lead to a pedestrian crossing, which is a puffin crossing, which will cross the road. If I now take it to the next slide, which illustrates the phasing of the development. The intention would be for the development to be undertaken in 3 phases. The first phase, outlined there in red, would be the first tranche of housing, along with the suds basin and the landscaping around the industrial estate. That suds basin, as I said earlier, would also serve as an amenity area for the development. And then future 2 phases of housing, and the last phase in green would also accommodate the additional small amenity area at the top, which would also have a viewing platform across the site. Okay, if we take you on to the next slide is a cross section, and it is really just illustrative of the change in level across the site. This is through units that are very close to the entrance to the site, units 23 and 43. And in this particular instance, you can see that the foundation level is for unit 23 is illustrated in the cross section there. Unit 43 sitting much higher, and what you have there is like a small retaining wall of 0.6 in order to ensure that unit 43 does have a level area of garden. Then the ground would slope down towards unit 23. If I take you on to the next 3 slides, the next 3 slides are just illustrative of the housing designs that are proposed, along with materials. There are 10 different housing designs across the site. This first slide shows like an example of one particular design of semi-detached units. One is 1 3/4 with a single-storey small 1-bedroom unit adjoining it. Materials are white rough cast, some grey render, and anthracite coloured windows. The next slide is again like a different design, again semi-detached unit. These units would have white rough cast, some Siberian larch cladding which would weather naturally, and green windows. And then the next slide is just another example of materials, these with white rough cast, anthracite coloured windows, and there would be cedar board cladding, which in this case would be a dark red colour. So then we move on to the next slide. There are 5 slides here, which are photographs, which are just to let you see the nature of the site. This first one is taken in the northeast corner, just where the secondary access road would break through into the Glenthew housing development. And in this area, there's a ditch which would be rerouted, and that area would be where the additional communal parking spaces would be provided in order to provide additional parking capacity for the houses that you just see to the right of the image. We then take you on to the next slide. This is looking down that eastern boundary, so staying basically taken from the same position, looking down the boundary. And you can see over in the distance the houses at Bridge Cottages and the edge of the industrial area. We'll take you to the next slide. This is looking directly south towards the rear of the industrial area, and again you can see just the fringe of Glenthew at the left of the image, and then Bridge Cottages again in the distance. Then if we take you to the next slide. This is looking southwest across the site, and there you can see the nature of the ground and also the fact that there is like a slope there. And then if I take you to the final slide, I'm just looking towards Tramdhu housing. The little building you can see just where the cursor was there is the Scottish Water plant, and then just beyond that to the right is the play park where the pedestrian link will go through. Okay, that concludes the PowerPoint presentation. If I maybe just take you back to the slide that has the layout on it, so I think that's slide 3. Members, I'll just briefly take you through the report itself. This application being major has been subject to a fair amount of procedure, and as I said previously, it has been subject to a pre-application consultation with communities. Further, the development was subject to an EIA screening, and that screening concluded that the development was unlikely to have a significant effect on the environment, and as such an environmental impact assessment report was not necessary. Further, due to the site boundary to the north, the Lewis Peatland Special Protection Area, it was necessary to undertake an appropriate assessment under the habitats regulations, and again this concluded that there was an unlikely significant effect on the integrity of that designated site. I then maybe take you through the report. The report sets out the description of the proposal in some detail at section 4, and then is followed up by the legislative context, the administrative process, and the administrative processes. Section 9 of your report sets out the advice that was sought and obtained through a statutory and non-statutory consultation process. The responses have been summarised at section 9 of the report, and they're set out in full in the appendix to the report. The policy context for the application has been set out in section 12 of the report. And then the detailed policy assessment has been set out in section 13. Regard has been had to the material planning considerations, and these have been set out in section 14, including comment on the matter that was raised in representation. The conclusion of the assessment is set out in section 15 of the report. And the conclusion is that the proposed housing development, being on an allocation site, is in keeping with the settlement pattern for the area. It has sufficient capacity to accommodate the housing and the required infrastructure, and in development it would not harm the amenities of neighbours or traffic safety, subject to imposition of relevant conditions to control those matters. It's concluded that the proposal accords with the policies of the Outer Hebrides Local Development Plan when read as a whole. Scottish planning policy lends weight in favour of the proposal, and there are no material considerations, including the matter raised in representation, that would allow us to come to a recommendation other than one for approval, subject to the conditions which have been set out in Appendix 1 to the report. That concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Morag. That was very detailed, and this is really a big development in the outskirts of Stornoway. So I'm going to open it for anyone who wants to ask Morag any questions.
Chair.
I think we could maybe take down the presentation from the screen share.
Corax, your Norman.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ian. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Maura, for the presentation. Very clear. Looks like an excellent site. I've just got a wee question, and it's basically I know I'm not sure at present, but I know that buses from the town were heading out that way, and they had a turning area. Now, I think it looks as if it's at close to where the access of the site is. I don't know if you knew about that, or do they still use it, or has there been provision made to retain that turning sort of place? Do you know anything about it?
My understanding is that that is part of the rationale for having the option of the through road, and that the buses could actually loop and come back, could come in and out of the development rather than actually be turning there.
Okay, that's fine. All right, thank you. Thanks, that's all I wanted to know.
So there's no need for the turn. You can go right in and right out. Keith Johnson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, good presentation there. My only concern is, and I would imagine under the conditions, that there has been an allowance really for the sewage and the rainwater, especially at this time of the year. Are we all very confident that the sewage exactly could cope, or is there an extension to the sewage, or is it going into the existing? So thank you.
Yeah, Scottish Water has confirmed that there is capacity to accommodate the development. And then in terms of surface water management, we were very conscious that given the slope of the ground and the nature of the soil, that there was a need for good consideration of how surface water runoff will be managed, and the Suds Basin that is shown in the southeastern corner of the site will have a small pond within that. It has been designed by engineers and will require to have the capacity to accommodate the level of runoff that would come off the site. The detail of that will be further tested through building standards, but there has been a considerable level of design work already undertaken on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maura. Convener, do you want to? Mic's off. Norman?
No, Chair, it's not. I don't think it's me. It might be somebody else who's got their hand up.
It's Norman. Sorry, it's Norman McDonald. Okay, Norman.
It's the proper Norman McDonald, not Norman.
Well, I wasn't going to promote.
Yeah. I know that we're just a planning authority with regards to this application, but I'm very conscious of what's been said latterly about rural housing and depopulation, etc. And this seems to be yet another loading into Stornoway of more and more housing. I'm assuming that there will be housing available for partial purchase, etc., through Scottish Government schemes, etc., included in the mix. But when we're talking about our own plan as well, I think we were, was it 55-45, building outside the Stornoway area. I don't know, does this fall actually within the designation of outside Stornoway? Morag, I'm not entirely sure. But it is obviously very close to Stornoway itself.
Yeah, it'll be classed as the urban development. It's classed as part.
Again, accusations will be levelled that we're loading more housing into the Stornoway conglomerate, and I'm very conscious of the fact that we appear to be building bigger schemes. Obviously, the cost of building houses in the format HHP that falls within the Scottish Government guidelines, but it's probably going to get levelled that the wrong kind of houses are getting built in the wrong places. This is an HHP development, and we're just a planning regulatory body. But I'm pretty sure that once this goes through, if it does go through, it's going to be levelled at us that we're loading more housing into Stornoway and further exacerbating existing congestion in the urban area. But what tends to happen anyway is if we do move housing out with the urban area of Stornoway, the first time there are house swaps or people want to move back into the Stornoway area. So we're kind of listening to arguments from outside about rural depopulation, but what the evidence is telling us is that people do want to live within the urban area. So it's just an observation rather than a criticism of the development, because obviously HHP see it as as beneficial to their own plans, etc. I just wonder, is that given where we are just now with the world and COVID, we're going to put pressure on existing services within the town. I think we probably will get criticised for this, but we cannot realistically object on the grounds of planning because it doesn't contravene any of our regulations. But I'm sure somebody will come up and say, what are you doing with regard to depopulation outside of Stornoway?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter what we try to do, we get criticised. But yes, I can see your point, Norrie. See your point right enough. But it's needful, it's needed around the town as well. So I'm quite looking forward to this development. There's Colleen, want to comment on?
Slightly wary, Chairman, of straying into non-planning related matters, but just in quick reaction to Councillor MacDonald, yes, the rural-urban split still remains within the housing strategy. That is a figure we're hopeful to get close to by the end of this programme. There's a lot of build happening at the moment in the rural areas. We all aspire to more build in the rural areas, and we're aware of other projects that will hopefully be approved by the Scottish Government in the not too distant future that are going to add to that figure of build in the rural area. So yes, there still remains Collier policy to ensure that there is a good balance of build between the urban Stornoway area and the rural areas.
Winner.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Colleen for that clarification there, and to Norrie as well. This has been a major bugbear for me, in particular over a significant number of years, and that 55-45 split does exist, and we as a council have to make sure that we take that forward, regardless of who the delivery mechanism is for these houses. I think there's a real issue just now in relation to housing in rural areas, in that what you see at best is maybe 4 or 5 units being built in an area, and reasons given for that is that there is no demand. The reality is there is demand, and it is not cost effective to be building 4 and 5 houses, as opposed to a scheme like this where you've got 72 houses. There are real economies of scale there, but I still think the balance is slightly out of kilter, as Norrie said. I still believe that people do want to live in rural communities. They do want to live in affordable social housing, and we as a council need to drive that through, as we've committed to previously. And I accept fully what Colleen said in terms of the aspiration we have within the term of this SHIP, the Strategic Housing Investment Programme. I accept the commitment to do that. But as members of the council, we need to push that forward, and I'm certainly pushing it forward as a representative of the council with HHP as well, that we should be looking at a much more diverse way of providing housing, particularly in the area out with the Stornoway Housing Management Area.
Oh yes, well, this is what's in front of us at the moment. To have a look at the plans and the recommendations. And anybody else want to have any comments from anybody else? The recommendations are at 3.1. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah,
approved.
Thank you very much. That concludes the meeting, and thank you for attending. Have a nice day.
You, Chair. Bye now.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair.